Hello, I'm Adam,
And I'm Adrian.
and welcome to a Halloween spooktacular cast from the Crypt. We
That's right.
always cover a Halloween movie, and here we are again. I don't know that we'll be able to do this next year, because we are fresh out of all worthwhile Halloween movies.
We should talk about Resurrection, though.
Okay, well, that's what we'll do
It
next year then.
it's just so bad that we really should talk about it.
It is a hilarious movie, and it is fun. Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's fun parts about it
Okay,
for
well that's
sure.
next year then.
Busta Rhymes.
But this year we talk about Halloween H20 or Halloween 20 years later. Now that title is a little misleading, I thought it was going to be, maybe it would take place at a water park or maybe Michael would be a mermaid, just add water, but it has nothing to do with water. Halloween 20 years later.
Yeah, and funny enough, released 20 years after the original film, and it's now 25 years since this movie came out. Just over 25 years since this movie came out. Kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, that is crazy. So this movie came out in 98, like you said, that's 20 years later from the 78 release of the original. And we recently have got to experience the reboot renaissance started by Halloween 2018. I loved it. I loved finally being able to feel like a part of the franchise, like I saw this movie in theaters when it came out, and I've never been able to say that about this franchise or most of the classic slasher franchises. And it felt good to take part in that. But that movie being 40 years later and a big reboot after this huge amount of time has passed, that was a concept introduced with this movie, because this is the
Yeah.
original Halloween 2018, I guess you could say. It's the all this time later, we retcon the entire franchise except for, in this case, the first two movies, and we're giving a fresh take. Laurie Strode is back. She's front and center. Jamie Lee Curtis. Here's what in this canon is the third movie, or for what makes a trilogy.
Uh, I gotta be honest. For me, of all the timelines that exist in this franchise, this might be my favorite overall.
That's fair.
I of course, Halloween 1, classic. It's a fantastic movie, speaks for itself. I am a huge defender and fan of Halloween 2. I actually really enjoy that sequel. I know most people do now these days, I believe, but I think it's a decent sequel. I love that John Carpenter wrote it while on a bender and in great distress because he did not want to make it. I just think it's kind of funny that it's good, in my opinion. It's a good sequel. And this movie, I don't think it's great, and I don't think it's perfect, but I also don't think it's bad. And this franchise spawned some bad movies.
Yeah. In a field of weeds, we have one beautiful flower, at least.
Yeah, I agree. But the name is probably the worst part of this movie. H2O
It's
is
just
silly,
weird.
but whatever.
But yeah, cool. Or like we mentioned, this is after the second one. This includes the second one in the canon, which is a movie excluded in the canon of the 2018 reboot. And I like that because there's always this, is Laurie Strode Micheal Myers' sister? Like, if you know anything about kind of the story or the lore of this franchise as a whole, you probably think, oh, he came back to Haddonfield to kill his sister, and that is why they have this weird, I want to say rivalry, but this connection. This is why he's always after her specifically and hunting her specifically. And that's like a fun motivation. It gives a reason for Jamie Lee Curtis to keep coming back for these movies. But I prefer the original movies. Like, he's just there on a rampage. He's kind of killing indiscriminately. And I like that they continue that in 2018. But also, I do also kind of like the timeline of their sister-brother dynamic. And there's this weird familial, fratricide thing that Micheal Myers is obsessed with. And we see that here, too.
Yeah, the sibling thing, I'm torn. I do enjoy the he's just evil incarnate take that the new movies have tried to do. The same thing with the Rob Zombie reboots to a certain extent. There's similar themes. But this movie, I think it solidifies that I prefer the actual sibling relationship between the two of them. It makes it really charged and honestly just gives you a little bit more to chew on. Whereas Michael Myers being evil and purely evil, I think is easy, and fun as well. He can be both. He can be evil incarnate and also have this sister that is not and is very good actually, and is just trying to exist and be a whole person. And I think that they work well together. I don't think you have to just have one or the other. And I do think that this timeline is proof of that.
Yeah. Oh, I also like that she's not just the final girl, like she is in the first movie. Like any slasher has a final girl. She's Jamie Lee
Yeah.
Curtis, really famous, now Oscar-winning actress. And to have, these sequels or whatever, Halloween Resurrection or, Halloween 5, who knows about those movies? Who watches those movies? But a movie which has Jamie Lee Curtis's face on the cover of it. Like, okay, now it's a Halloween movie. And this gives her kind of like, she's the sister. She has like a stake in it. And, it's just a way to organically make her have to fight Michael. And I'm glad to see her.
I will say, oh yeah, and just more to that point, I think this movie solidifies the beginning of Halloween becoming Laurie Strode's saga. H20 came at a time when, Halloween 3, Halloween 4, Halloween 5, they all tried to depart from Laurie Strode as depicted by Jamie Lee Curtis, right? And then, of course, later on, we'd kind of fall off of that too, and we'd have the Rob Zombie movies, which I don't think anybody counts. But this movie saw bringing back the OG final girl, and making her, I guess, the point of interest in the franchise again. And I prefer that because I do think it's important to have a really strong, interesting slasher character, of course, at the helm of any franchise. But this is what sets Halloween apart, is Jamie Lee Curtis is Laurie Strode. And I'm a fan of it. I am. I like that rivalry, like you said earlier.
Yeah, well, that kind of mirrors the behind the scenes. Like, they get away from Laurie Strode in the, 3, 4, and 5 movies, but they also get away from John Carpenter and the kind of original idea and the people behind the camera. It leaves them and kind of becomes its own money-making, machine, really. And aside from Mustafa Akkad, they kind of lose everybody. But this movie is them all coming back together, really. I think John Carpenter was originally supposed to have a bigger role in this movie and then didn't because there was more studio beef that he seemed to have a lot when making all the Halloween movies, and he seemed to think that he didn't get paid enough for the first movie, and yada yada yada. Basically, he dipped out, was not as big in this movie. But Jamie Lee Curtis stepped away from the franchise. She didn't want to be the girl doing Halloween 4, 5, 6, whatever. But here, she was wanting to come back. I believe she was part of the reason they started making this movie in the first place, is that she expressed interest in making what is almost like a reunion Halloween film. It's very commemorative. And the fact that she was interested in it was like, okay, well, we got Jamie Lee Curtis on board. Let's make a movie. And it feels that way. And I'm so glad she's in this movie, because you could say this about so many Halloween movies she's in. It's like her and a bunch of, B horror movie actors that are just cannon fodder there to be killed. So it's like her acting her heart out next to like some guy who's going to be killed in the next scene. And you could really tell, I think, a lot in this movie.
I agree. Also, something I think this movie really has going for it is Kevin Williamson being the head writer. It doesn't feel like a Carpenter movie, I guess I should say. It does feel like a departure, and you feel that distance. But Kevin Williamson was really thriving around this time. Of course, one of our favorites, The Faculty, came out this same year. And, he had already worked on Scream 1 and 2 2 years prior. So he was doing a lot of work, and he, I guess, kind of specializes in writing younger characters. I don't think it's always good, but there is a different approach to this film where we have a few new characters that we have to follow. And though I like Kevin Williamson and I respect him, I do think those younger characters are the weak point of this movie. Like, I am 100% in it for Laurie Strode. But nonetheless, right, I'm excited to see his name as the screenwriter on the film.
Yeah, no, the younger characters are not important cannon fodder, but the movie seems to know that, and it really does focus on Jamie Lee Curtis a lot, and that's good. Another reason, like, for me, big thing about this movie that I love, you know me, that cheesy, like, crappy, super tropey era that was the late 90s. Here it is in movie form. It's so great. It has the, like, so much that was so tropey at this time in horror cinema is happening here. You know, you got LL Cool J thrown in there because why not? Just some character, because why not? The Faculty had Coolio, if you remember. So it's like, you know, also carrying this tradition with Kevin Williamson movies. You know, and then Scream with Drew Barrymore.
And the same Greasy boy, Josh Hartnett, is also in The Faculty, and he's in this movie too. He plays John Tate.
And this was the freaking, like, era he had by a death grip, I guess. Yeah.
God have mercy. Yeah, he's in everything, and he's so bad.
Yeah, he is. And oh man, in this movie and in The Faculty, he had the shittiest 90s haircut. This whole movie.
It's greasy.
Oh, it's awful.
Greasy.
It's like short, but then like the center of the sides are a little longer. Like he's got some weird tips thing going on that could have only happened in 98. And I'm so glad. And he's still playing the, like, he's like cool or whatever guy.
He's cool. He has orgies at school.
Is that what we're calling it?
And, dude, what else are we going to call it? It's weird. The candlelight scene. Yeah. You know, we walked in.
He has a group of friends, but this is another 90s trope. They're so horny, they might as well all be having sex with each other.
Yeah, it's weird. It's super weird. But I guess if you think back to the original films, Michael loves to kill horny teenagers. So, well, there's that.
I think one of the greatest praises I could give the original film is all these relationships between these teens just feel so much more organic than like this or than any other slasher movie, really. You know, the writing isn't as goofy. But in the 90s, there really was a problem with writing teens, because every person writing a teenager was like, what would the hip, cool kids say? And this is what they'd say, and this movie is exactly like that. In every third line someone says, you're just like scratching your head, like, what? What does that mean? Like,
and that's true, like Kevin Williamson fashion.
Yes, exactly. And I love that, though. I love how cheesy that is, and I love how it aged so poorly. But it's fun when things age poorly like that. It's fun to see, like, this is a snapshot of the time. It's really funny. Maybe we'll do that in the 2018 movie in 20 years. We'll look back and think that.
Yeah, maybe.
I guess, should we unwrap the box that is this movie? Get into it?
It's a short unboxing, really.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because what needs to happen? You know, a little bit of plot at the beginning and end, and then killing in the middle. Any good slasher. Yeah. But basic premise. This movie happens 20 years after the second movie, and Laurie Strode has faked her death, moved to California, and changed her name to Carrie Tate. And so her son is John Tate.
John Tate,
and she's faked her death so that way Michael couldn't find her in the event he wasn't killed and comes back for her. I don't understand this part of the plot. It's so, like, she went in witness protection for a dead guy because she knew, I guess, but, like, it feels ridiculous. And then the fact that Michael still finds her name and still finds where she lives is even more ridiculous, but 90s, I guess. I don't know.
Well, he's got a connection to her. It's his sister.
He just knows. I wish they would almost do something like that. I wish they would, like, he knows where she is because he can sense her or something. Because what they go with is I believe it's the nurse that is, like, standing next to Sam Loomis for, like, one scene in the first movie. I believe he goes to her home, kills her, and then finds some document that says where he learns Carrie Tate is Laurie's new name and she faked her death and all that. Which, like, what? What?
Yeah. Yeah. The way that the second movie ends is Loomis, he basically blows up an entire hospital and sacrifices himself for Laurie. And yeah, blows up the hospital, blows himself up, blows up Michael. You are led to believe that Michael died. Laurie has since faked her death, and I guess you're right, because she thinks that he's still out there. That bit's a little unclear. I think the weirder thing for me about this movie and Michael being at the center of it, they do not explain how the hell he's like mobile or not burned. Well, A, he has no burns from the second film and the way that it wraps up. B, I don't know if you remember this, but Laurie shoots him in the eyes in the second movie. There's that great shot of him bleeding from his eyes, and we get no damage.
He's over it.
Like, wouldn't it have been cool?
He healed.
Wouldn't have been cool if he was burned up and was like missing an eyeball.
Yeah. Well, I like that they do kind of.
Under the mask.
We get that later on in the reboot, the most recent reboot, and his mask does look cool.
That's
but
true.
You're so right. Like, I guess he just. What did he do for the last 20 years?
He healed.
He healed. Yeah. He grew new eyes.
He regenerated.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I guess he's not important. We're kind of skipping over it, so I'm going to go back to it, though, real quick. The cold open? Can we talk about the cold open? I love this cold open. Oh, man. First of all, a young...
Also very 90s.
Super 90s. Cold open with a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt in a flannel and I think like a beanie. And he's like, just came home from hockey practice. And his neighbor, who's this nurse character that we mentioned, she sees that her house has been broken into, so she goes to his house, the neighbor kid's house, asks to use the phone, they call the police, and he also has some dumb friend with him, and they're like, well, I'm gonna go investigate, I'm gonna see what's up, and they go in and run around and don't find anything, and there's a lot of dumb things about this sequence, like, A, the fact that they didn't wait for the police, B, the fact that it takes like a good couple hours, I feel like, for the police to actually show up. But some really good kills in this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically the way
I love the shot of him with a skate in his face.
Yes. Oh, man. So I'm glad they killed him, first of all.
Me too. Super annoying kid.
So they find out nothing's in the house. She goes in the house and everything's ominously quiet. She goes back to his house, and that's where she finds him with the ice skate in his face. Michael's gone across the street, I guess, and killed them. And now they're having this big struggle in this other house. The police show up to investigate the break-in, and she's screaming at the window like, no, come on, turn around, I'm in this house. And that's when Michael gets her. And I love that. There's that, bit of irony going on. It's a very fun cold open. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt with ice skate in his face was great.
Another Halloween movie that mercilessly kills a child.
I know. I kind of like that, though. I like that. He's a teen, so it's okay. And he honestly, I don't know how old Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in this. He could have probably been 20 when he filmed this. So he looks old enough to be okay to murder.
Wow.
I guess. That's how it works. Because any movie is about...
It's certainly old enough where you don't feel that bad about him dying on screen.
Well, how many slashers are about teens getting killed, but they're really 30-year-olds?
So many.
So it's okay. Yeah, so it's fine. It's cool. He's got a snot nose, too. So.
Yeah, he's obnoxious, for sure.
Well, after this cold open, we get to find out what Laurie's been doing. She lives in Summer Glen, California, and she's the head mistress of some boarding school? And it has a grounds, and she lives in a house on the property, and it's kind of bizarre, but okay, good for her. They don't elaborate much. And of course her son goes there, and he is, like we already said, is dumb. He looks dumb as hell. Along with his hair, he also has he's got the, boarding school uniform, but his tie is too loose. It's more like a necklace than a tie, and his shirt's unbuttoned or whatever.
He's cool. He's too
He's
cool for school.
He's just cool. This scene opens where he's trying to go out for Halloween, and he's evidently never been able to celebrate Halloween for obvious reasons. She's traumatized and paranoid, and he's like, "Mom, this is the year we're doing it. Let me go have fun." And I don't remember exactly what he says, but he's like kind of being disrespectful, kind of mouthing off, and she goes, "I'm gonna forgive you because you get your mouth from my side of the family, but you're out of line," or something like that.
Oh no, he says something along the lines of, "I don't want to have to keep paying for like your brother trauma." Basically,
Yeah.
it's like something like that. Super rude, considering this man has hunted and killed her, or tried to kill her. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's a little.
Like, you would never say that to your mother.
No, I wouldn't, but I guess he would.
Me neither.
Yeah, we learn like the father's not.
I'd end up being a victim.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Dad's not in the picture, as you said, which is also a hilarious detail to me, because somehow, in all these years, when she's had to go into hiding and change her identity, she still managed to marry a bum father. Or, you know, have a bum father for her son.
But she's also the head mistress of a boarding school.
That too. You would think maybe they would do a little better at vetting.
This is something that they carry on to that 2018 reboot, and I'm so glad they did. Severe alcoholic. She like chugs wine or whiskey and just drinking.
And you would be.
Movie. I guess you would be. And I think the fact that it is Halloween is why she's drinking a little more too. But I'm so glad. It's just funny. Alcoholism is not funny, but seeing Jamie Lee Curtis like, ooh, grab a cocktail and down it. I don't know, like, go off. She is HBOC. Yeah. She's literally, title and position is HBOC, so she does what she wants. She has fun.
She does have fun, which also, she has that new boyfriend, too.
She does. So there's, like, he's just a teacher on this campus, and he's, like, this goofy clown man, but they're clearly, like, hooking up. I think, like, we are introduced by their relationship where he's like, headmistress, could I talk to you outside real quick? And they go outside, and they're like, Mac.
Yeah.
90s. Yeah.
He like practically pulls it out in the alley. And and she's like, "No, boundaries, professionalism." And it's like, you're literally having sex with one of your employees.
Yeah. Where's the boundary?
My favorite part, and this is a jump, but it doesn't matter. It speaks to their relationship, is he's just this like schmo that works at this school. And she later on confesses to him that she is not Carrie Tate, that she is Laurie Strode. And she does it while they're pillow talking, basically.
Yeah.
And he clearly just wants to hit. He's not worried about anything else. And she's like, "Yeah, my brother killed people and I had to change my name. And I'm Laurie Strode. I'm not Carrie Tate. I lied to you out of necessity." And he, quote, says, "That's sucky," and keeps trying to have sex with her.
Well, he doesn't believe her that she's being serious, but then she starts almost crying. Yeah, no, it goes on for way too long. Like she's like almost crying, and he's like, "Yeah, what else?" You know. Also, in this universe, the original Illinois massacre from the first movie is like everyone in the world knows about it, and it's the most famous thing ever. And Laurie Strode is a big famous name everyone knows 20 years later in California. So, you know, whatever. Hype it up. Hype up the beef, at least.
Yeah, which, after the 90s, we'd enter an era where, like, 3 victims is really not going to get remembered by anybody.
20 years later in another state? Like, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I hate to tell you.
Yeah. I guess, continuing with the plot. So the whole academy is going on a field trip to Yosemite for Halloween, which, okay. And her son, John, and a couple of his goofball, really horny friends are gonna sneak off the bus. And in the basement of the, like, main building, I guess, like, below the dining room, maybe it's just, like, the dining cafeteria building, I don't know. They've set up, like, a little, like, they got a little bit of wine and are gonna, like, party, basically, alone with themselves. And so now that's the impetus of, like, why they're all alone on a campus with Laurie and eventually with Michael. But before we get to Michael, we're introduced a couple times, I guess, by this point in the film, to LL Cool J. I don't remember his character's name. You don't need to know it. He's LL Cool J. And he's like the gatekeeper, basically. And
I think it's Ronnie.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would be Ronnie. And he's just a shtick. He's like a joke that they keep going back to. And it's really weird and not necessary and shoehorned in. And it's literally just so they could say they had LL Cool J in this movie. He doesn't even get killed in this movie. And like, at least slash LL Cool J, you know? Like, he's just kind of there and he's fine by the end of it.
He was too beloved.
I should say, at one point, Laurie's dumb boyfriend mistakes him for Michael and empties a cartridge of a pistol into this man. Like, shoots him up, like 6 bullets through the torso. And then at the end of the movie, he's like on the phone with his girlfriend again. Like, fine. And his shtick in this movie is he's trying to talk sexy to his girlfriend on the phone. And like, anytime you see him, he has the phone on hold and he's talking to his girlfriend. And he, at first, is trying to write romance fiction or maybe just pornographic fiction. And, like, that's his thing and that's his dream. And his girlfriend's just clowning on him the whole time. And this is another 90s thing. Suffers so greatly from white guy writing for black people. Because any scene between them is like, who talks like this?
No one talks like that.
No one in the world.
I will say, it's a little funny to see LL Cool J whispering smut to an angry woman on the phone. It's kind of funny.
He seems so wholesome. LL Cool J just seems like a dad. Like, he could be in like the...
He is wholesome.
He could be in the like Adam Sandler group in this movie. This version of LL Cool J.
Writing smut is not wholesome, but it is wholesome to have your like wife or girlfriend
let
be your smut editor.
Yeah, let it be wholesome.
You're right.
It's all about how you paint the picture. Yeah, exactly. And he wants to impress his girlfriend, clearly. She's not impressed. Until she is.
She's hard to please. She kind of
gets into it, yeah. But anyway. So Michael, another thing, has stolen a car from the original house. He gets a flat tire, and we get a scene while he's on his way to Laurie, where there's a mother and her little girl. They go to the bathroom at some random truck stop, and then suddenly the door opens. You see some feet come in, and there's this really tense scene of Michael in the bathroom with this mother and her child, and she's hiding in a stall hoping that he doesn't find her. And this is something that they kind of redo in Halloween 2018. There's a woman hiding in the stall. Michael comes in at some truck stop. And while this scene ends happily with this mother and her child living, and Michael doesn't bother him, he just steals their car. The 2018 one, I'm glad they took it in the exact opposite direction and tried to make it like the most brutal murder scene in the movie. And I don't know, I like to see this scene happen in 2 different ways, and like 2 different interpretations by 2 different directors. I just thought it was really interesting to see again here.
I'm not gonna add anything to that.
Okay. Oh, do you want to move on?
Yeah. First of all, Michael can drive. Hilarious. Always funny when they do this in any of the movies, because he's been in prison since he was a little boy. I mean, I guess in the second Halloween, I'm pretty sure he also drives. But anytime they put Michael behind the wheel, I think it's the funniest thing ever.
Isn't it?
I feel like he would immediately get pulled over.
Why would he know how to drive?
He would not. He literally would not know how to drive.
Never been in a car before.
But anyway, after the car gets stolen, the second car gets stolen, we go back to the school, and everybody's kind of doing their thing. They're gearing up for the trip to Yosemite. And this is just about when we start to really see the dynamic with all the kids. John has a girlfriend named Molly, and oh God, just like one of the least likable characters in any slasher I've ever seen. And there's another couple. I forget their name. I think the girl's name is Sarah. But essentially, they all decide they're going to forego the trip, and they're going to throw a Halloween bash. Yes, in the basement. All of it is coated with just so much angst and horniness that it's painful.
90s angst and horniness. Because they're all cool.
Yeah.
They're too cool for the field trip.
They're also cool. And this is what you were talking about earlier, right? After they decide this, Laurie and her son John get into a heated exchange. You know, John, in words that are less eloquent than mine, tells her that her trauma is affecting him negatively, right? And he wants to live his life, which is understandable. But he's just so smarmy.
He's so
to his
smug.
mother.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an abnormal thing for a teenager to want.
Especially when it's cool.
Yes, it's not it's not his trauma, and so he shouldn't have to live in that shadow. I totally agree with that sentiment. The problem is that's not how he says it, and it's not how he approaches the situation. He wants to get laid, and he is angsty and annoying. And part of me was hoping he'd get slashed throughout the film. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but whatever. You know, she doesn't want to let him go on the trip. And little does she know, he's not going on the trip. They're going to hang out in the basement. And of course, as this is happening and they're arguing, Micheal is actively making his way toward campus and eventually sneaks onto campus.
Yes, and this is where he lets LL Cool J live. He doesn't kill him, and that's kind of something I wish didn't happen as much in this movie. I feel like there's too many characters by the end of this movie that have lived. Kill them all. Death to all of them.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but he totally would have killed that little girl and the mom in that bathroom.
Yeah, he would have, and I'm glad they kind of redeemed themselves of that in the 2018 reboot when he does kill a child and that woman in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I guess that's a big difference between these two interpretations of Micheal as the mindless killer versus the sibling. Like, here he doesn't kill just anyone because he has a purpose. He's going to kill Laurie. In, like, 2018, like, he's a killer. He'll kill anyone and everyone if they get close enough to him. And I guess that's interesting. And it also reflects kind of what you could do with maybe what time period this was. Like when we watched Halloween 2018, we were like, damn, they killed that 13-year-old, you know? And, like, that was brutal.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that in 98, so.
No, absolutely not. And honestly, this movie does feel very safe.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it's not like there weren't brutal slashers back in the day, but maybe the Halloween audience has changed.
Yeah.
I don't know, or maybe not, right? Maybe they've always wanted gore and they never quite got it until that 2018 reboot.
It feels like they've gone to their roots again. 78, like that movie coming out in 78, the original, like that was a brutal movie for 1978. That was like, you know, people thought of that movie like they thought of Texas Chainsaw. Like, this is a rough, scary movie to watch about people getting killed. And there was like just this realistic fear to it. And you don't see that here. Like, here it's a little goofier. Here it's a little just like safe traditional slasher, like you said.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that comes with, you know, Kevin Williamson being at the helm, considering that he had done several big projects at this point. Stuff that is pretty palatable to the average audience goer, like Scream 1 and 2. Moviegoer.
Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, moving on. Micheal finds the kids in their basement, and we get John's two friends. It's John, his girlfriend, and his two cannon fodder friends that you know are going to be the first people to die. And they are. There's this very long, drawn-out scene where this kid drops a corkscrew into a garbage disposal, and he's, like, trying to fish around in the sink drain. Meanwhile, you can see Micheal approaching him from behind. And he ends up just, I think, like, choking and stabbing him to death. And I am kind of let down. I kind of wish we saw some garbage disposal action. They were trying to subvert your expectation by, like, oh, it wasn't the garbage disposal. It was this that killed him. But no, let's get brutal, you know? It's the 90s. Let's show me some crazy action. And this kill I didn't feel was very gruesome, but very shortly after this kid's girlfriend comes to look for him, and she finds his corpse like torn apart in the like dumbbell elevator. And I like that. So while I did like the kill, I did like the discovery of the body.
Yeah, because he's gutted with the corkscrew. And it looks all jagged and gross.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed that, though I agree, we could have figured something out. Like, he couldn't have gotten the corkscrew out, and then, been pushed back into the garbage disposal and gutted with the corkscrew.
Yeah, corkscrew in the eye too. For me,
Right.
that's the
Come
way to
on.
go. And then that kill was a little anticlimactic because it happened. Like there was no struggle. This kid was just killed. His girlfriend though, there was a pretty good struggle of her. She's forced to crawl into the elevator with her boyfriend's corpse in order to escape Michael. And Michael manages in the struggle to slam the thing on her leg, and it twists her ankle, and so now she's wounded and she can't run, and there's a pretty good sequence of Michael trying to get at her, and she's going up and down this dumbbell, and that's pretty cool. It was tense enough and interesting, and I like to chase, and by this point in the movie we needed a good chase. I think this movie's pretty well paced, but it's a little slower towards the beginning and then kind of picks up a little rapidly here. But I think this sequence kind of mellowed it out, maybe.
I agree. I think it's slow to start, but it picks up. And to be honest, it held my attention.
Yeah, me too. See, it is slow to start, but I don't mind it because it's mostly them building up Laurie. And unlike almost every other character in any other slasher, we care about Laurie. We want to know what she's been up to, It's not like, Friday the 13th where we spend way too much time talking about some guy's life, for him to be killed 15 minutes into the movie. This is Laurie Strode, this is her family, this is, there's weight to these characters that there isn't in other movies. Not to these friends, though, who get killed pretty unceremoniously.
Yeah.
John and his girlfriend discover the bodies, though, and then the rest of the movie is them fleeing from Michael / Laurie trying to end Michael once and for all. In this struggle, initially, John gets stabbed in the leg, so once again he's wounded while he's running away from Michael, but thankfully Michael has that horror movie slasher problem of being really slow and always walking. That keeps him alive for a while. But meanwhile, while all this is happening, this is the scene where Laurie's kind of having a weird pillow talk with her boyfriend, and she just randomly has the thought, it just dawns on her, that her son is exactly as old as she was when Michael first came for her. And so she suddenly realizes, oh, Michael must be coming this year, I guess, to kill her son? And she immediately, runs out of the house and tries to go find him. Now, that doesn't make any sense, because, A, how would Michael even know she had a son, let alone how old he is? And also, it seems like, no, he doesn't care about her son. He just cares about her. I don't... This is
alternate universe where Michael just wants to be an uncle.
Yeah, I mean, he's how many freaking, nieces and nephews has he had in various forms of this franchise at this point?
That's a good point.
Yeah, and they'll retcon each other. They never exist in the same timeline, but he is an uncle constantly. Yeah, she has only children, but she has 3 different only children in 3 various versions of this franchise. And that's interesting.
Well, and I think they retcon it constantly because no one cares. No one wants a child. No one cares about the kid.
John Tate.
Yeah. You're not in it for that. You're not in it for the family dynamic. The sister thing with Michael is enough.
I think so, yeah.
It gives us some semblance of stakes, right? I think the 2018 movies toe that line a little more gracefully. Judy Greer's terrible in that movie, and I maintain that. But, the kids in that film are actually not so bad, and it's a little better. Here, and in the previous movies, right, like Halloween 4, there's just really nothing there. You don't care. You're not invested in the characters. You just want Laurie back.
Yeah. Well, one of the weakest things about the 2018 thing is how heavily they lean into her family. They really want you to know about her daughter, and no, we don't. We don't need to know. It's okay. We're fine.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I guess back to this movie, though. We keep tangenting on other movies.
It's hard not to.
Yeah, I know. Well, from now on, like I said, it's this chase scene between Michael and these kids and Laurie. And I really like the chase scene here. It's pretty good. It's pretty cool. It's them running from Michael in creative and new ways, and it really does feel like a rat race to just get away from him. I really like the scene where there's this like metal gate that the kids get stuck behind. There's a metal gate, and then there's a wooden door to the entrance of this building. And they manage to get the metal gate closed behind them, but they can't open the wooden door, so they're stuck in this thin space between the door and the gate. And Michael's like reaching through the bars trying to stab at them, and they're fiddling with the lock to open it, and then Michael manages to get the keys, and it's really tense. This movie does a good job of keeping a fast-paced, tense atmosphere once there is action happening. But here, Laurie opens the door, and she's finally reunited with her son, and she closes the door, and there's this, like, pretty cheesy, like, she slams the door in Michael's face, and Michael stares through the glass at her, and they get this really close face-to-face, like, she's meeting him again for the first time kind of shot. And they always got to do it. I think they did that, like, same thing in the 2018 reboot. Something along
They
those
do.
lines. Yeah,
they do.
It's
and
great.
It's fine.
It's cheesy.
It's cheesy, but I kind of enjoy it.
No, it's fun. It's fun. Because, I mean, this, it's kind of a cheesy concept of, like, the eternal struggle between Micheal Myers and Laurie Strode.
You know what really makes that moment goofy, though? Michael's mask is so stupid in this movie.
Exactly what I was going to say. You can see his eyes way too much.
It's so stupid in this movie. I don't know why it's different, but it's not well made. Whatever it is. It's like oblong. It's very, very stretched or something.
Yeah.
The hair looks different.
It's just off. Like, you can't put your finger exactly on what it is, but the way I'll describe it is, the original is, you've heard the story. It's the Captain Kirk mask that they bleached and messed up to look creepy. This movie feels like they went to a Halloween store and bought a Micheal Myers mask, and that's the mask they use. And while it's similar, it's not quite the same. And like I said, you see his eyes too much. It's not as scary if you see his eyes. In the original, all shots of him, you couldn't see his eyes. They're completely shadowed. But yeah, when you see his baby blues, you're not so afraid.
He does feel way more human in this movie.
Yeah, immortal, maybe. And I guess
there's a scene at the end that I think really kind of lifts the curtain. And we'll talk about that in a second. But man.
First we'll talk about just some more running around this campus. The campus is a good setting to have, like, it's like a Dead by Daylight map, like it's a big space to run around and play around in and have a good chase scene in. Then this is the part where Laurie's boyfriend shoots LL Cool J, not to death, but what should have been to death. And now they don't have a gun anymore. And Michael shows up and just guts him. It's like, once again, so unceremoniously. They've survived this long. He just stabs him in the back and then, like, lifts him up with the knife, and he's over. Like, that's it. But I didn't really care. I on one hand, I wanted Laurie to have a lover. On the other hand, though, I was like, this schmo, though, we needed some blood. So sorry to this man.
I felt nothing.
Yeah.
What is cool about that death, and again, it's something that they expand on in the last act of the film, is Michael is very strong in this movie. There's that one scene where he does a one-armed pull-up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Man, and the way he just picks up this full-grown man and kills him, I thought it was pretty sweet. And I thought he was a goofball. I didn't care.
Yeah, if Kevin James was in this movie, you wouldn't want him to live either, But then it's Michael versus Laurie. He's chasing Laurie, and this whole chasing continues. Like, a good portion of this movie is kind of like this one huge stream of a chase. Yeah, and I like that a lot. It's very fast-paced. It's very action-packed and holds your attention. And here they're in the mess hall, and they do this really long sequence of Michael's walking on top of these tables, and Laurie is hiding under them. He's flipping tables to get to her and stabbing through the tables, and she's rolling around trying to escape. And it probably goes on for an unrealistic amount of time before it's like, okay, Michael, you can get to this girl under the table. It cannot be this difficult. But then we have, like, what would be, I guess, like, the end of the movie. Laurie ends up getting the knife from Michael and stabs him, and then throws him off a balcony, and he lands on a table, paralleling his quote-unquote death in the first movie. And this is where it feels like, okay, the movie's over. The police show up. They put him in a body bag. It's ending. Ronnie's okay. LL Cool J's okay, I mean. And the movie's ending. And it's like, okay, that was a good movie. That's a good movie. But then it continues, doesn't it?
It does. And again, I think it's pretty well paced, but it overstays its welcome, I guess, maybe a little bit. I knew that it was going to overstay its welcome as soon as in that last scene when he falls on the cafeteria table, Laurie wants to stab him one time just to make sure he's really dead. And Ronnie comes back. He survived, and he stops her. He's like, he's dead. It's okay.
If I was Ronnie, I would let her. Well, why do you care?
I would let her stab him 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But anyway, after that, the cops get there. They're obviously investigating the crime scene. And Michael is placed into a body bag. So again, presumably, he's dead. However, Laurie knows that something is up. She knows that he's still alive. And she decides to take justice into her own hand. And she literally carjacks a police officer.
I love that.
First of all, actually, she takes an axe. She takes the officer's gun. And then she hijacks the police van. And she's like, no, I'm doing this myself. I guess I didn't preface this, but the van that she hijacks is actually the van Michael is in. And she wants to drive him to, I guess, a secure location or a remote place where she can end it once and for all. Of course, it's a little more complicated than that. And he shoots awake and unzips the body bag and busts out. And they have this huge battle. One final battle, you hope. I think when she slams on the brakes, he comedically shoots out of the windshield.
Yeah.
Of the van.
Oh, she beats the crap out of him. This whole scene is not really a struggle. It's her just destroying this man. And also the fact that she knows he'll come back is a little too fourth wall breaking for me, because she doesn't know that. She's seen him die once in the second movie, and then in theory, this is the only movie he's returned from. Or, maybe she has this fear of it, but it's more because the audience knows he's invincible and knows he always comes back. Whatever. But this scene is kind of fun, of her just destroying Michael. She throws him out that window. She absolutely just shoots the van right off a cliff face with her in it. They tumble dramatically. And she kind of acts like this was all according to plan. But it definitely wasn't, because how do you plan this? While the car is rapidly tumbling down a cliff side, she manages to jump out of it safely. And then the van smashes into Michael and pins him up against a tree. And is so many times dead over. 6 times dead at this point. And they do this weird scene where he kind of wakes up and he reaches out to her and she almost reaches out to him and is just about to touch his hand. And they always do this scene of him almost touching some weird family member. This is kind of a thing they keep doing in this franchise, and it is never organic, and I don't know why they keep doing it. But she's about to touch his hand, and then she goes psych, basically, and just chops his head off with an axe.
Which is admittedly pretty sweet.
Yeah,
but
which
it
is
makes
all right.
no sense that he's reaching out to her like that.
No, I don't know. Maybe to strangle her was what I like to imagine.
Yeah, I like to imagine he's trying to fool her, maybe.
But they kind of paint it as they're siblings one more time. But why? Why do they have to have this?
Yeah, y'all never canonically. They didn't really have a relationship.
No,
because Laurie was estranged.
Yeah, absolutely estranged. And then what? This man who she hijacked a police car to kill and then is deathly afraid of her whole life and is brought out to the boonies to violently murder. Why does she have a moment of connection with him?
Right. Right.
And then she gets over it and then cuts his head off. And I love the single swing of the axe decapitating him. Very Friday the 13th there. And B, I love any time in this franchise where they absolutely definitively kill Michael. Because every freaking movie ends with did he really die? Or is he still out there? Who knows?
Yeah,
In this movie, she was like, no, he dies. And apparently, a huge stipulation that Jamie Lee Curtis had with doing this movie was that she makes it absolutely clear that Michael dies and could not come back at the end of this movie. So this is an ending that she wouldn't have done the movie for if not for Michael's death. And I really respect that. I like that a lot.
The sad thing is they did coerce her into making another one.
Yeah, and then immediately they made a sequel to this movie. This movie was not supposed to have a sequel, but they made a sequel, Halloween Resurrection. And that is probably one of, if not the worst movie in this franchise.
Yeah,
and the movie
way they
starts
retcon
with
death
the
is-
nurse just going, the ending to the last movie was an imaginary thing. It didn't really happen. Like, almost just looks into the audience and says that, because there's no way to explain that away. They wrote themselves into a corner.
It makes no sense. But
I like the theory of maybe there's multiple Michael Myers. His twin brothers who survived and came back in this movie to kill Laurie.
Micheal Myers.
Micheal Myers. Pretty safe movie, pretty easy movie, pretty classic slasher. But to just get a classic slasher with the Halloween skin is pretty cool. And I like it. And I had fun with it. And it's probably not even top 3 of my favorites in this franchise, but it's up there and I like it. And I show it to people. So
Overall, I'd give this movie the rating of a golf clap. And those are my final thoughts.
That's pretty good. I rate it 4 quacks out of 5. There you go. Nope, that's not 4. There we go.
That's way more than 4. Okay.
We're both obviously cannot do preschool math, so. Well, that's the Halloween movie of the year that we've done. So there you go.
Nice.
There you have it.
Nice.
All right. Well, that is all I have to say. Thank you for joining me, Adrian.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.